I'm so glad you're here. If you're watching this video, please like and subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're listening to my story of unspoken betrayals. I had already moved abroad, not chasing adventure, but choosing quiet. A new country forced routine, order, and silence where chaos once lived. The divorce papers were dry, signatures finished, distance deliberate. I learned the streets, the language, the evenings alone. Peace arrived slowly, without celebration. Then late one night, my phone vibrated on the table. No calls came that late anymore. I looked without urgency. A mutual friend had written, brief and careless, saying she got married today, as if sharing weather. It landed heavier than expected, sharp and sudden, disrupting weeks of carefully built emotional calm inside me. There was no warning attached, no explanation, no softening detail. Just information dropped like a stone into still water. I read the line again, then again, measuring my reaction. I did not feel jealousy or loss. What surfaced instead was a strange pressure behind my eyes. Something unfinished had stirred. People do not rush weddings when they are content. They rush ceremonies when they are escaping questions. I sat down, replaying years backward, noticing moments I once ignored. The message cracked open a door I believed time and distance had sealed permanently, without asking permission from my past quietly again. I stood by the window watching foreign streetlights flicker below, realizing how far my life had shifted. I had not followed her story since leaving. No spying, no updates, no curiosity. Distance had given clarity. Yet that single sentence pulled memory forward. I remembered how quickly she needed certainty, applause, validation. Marriage for her was never silence. It was performance. I understood then this wedding was not a beginning but a statement, delivered loudly, aimed somewhere beyond the groom. And suddenly, I sensed why the message arrived now, at night, across borders and time to me alone. I did not respond to the friend. I did not ask questions. I placed the phone face down and breathed. This was not pain returning. It was recognition. Something unresolved had chosen its moment. I knew this story was not finished, despite continents between us. When people rush to rewrite their lives, they forget witnesses remain. That night abroad, under unfamiliar skies, I understood the past had just stepped forward, quietly, demanding to be acknowledged. And with that realization, the silence I built began to feel temporary, not permanent, as if waiting for its turn to speak clearly at last. The divorce was quiet, almost confusingly so, and that unsettled everyone around us. Friends expected shouting, relatives expected accusations, but nothing dramatic arrived. There were no slammed doors or lawyers feeding on resentment. What happened instead was slower and more unsettling. I noticed my voice fading inside daily routines. Decisions were announced, not discussed. My role shifted from partner to observer without ceremony. Respect did not disappear violently. It softened, then thinned, until it felt like habit wearing the mask of marriage. By the time I noticed, I was already standing slightly outside my own life, quietly confused, unnoticed, alone. I began paying attention to small signals I once dismissed as normal compromise. Conversations felt scheduled, affection felt functional, praise sounded conditional. I was useful, reliable, present, yet invisible. When I raised concerns, they were minimized with patience that felt rehearsed. I realized peace was being purchased with silence. Staying required shrinking, agreeing, smoothing every edge that made me human. The marriage did not collapse suddenly. It slowly edited me out, scene by scene, until my absence would not even disrupt the script anymore. This erosion happened while smiles remained polite, photographs happy, and outsiders saw nothing wrong at all. I left without anger because anger would have kept me tied there. Walking away calmly was the only honest option left. I did not want victory, apologies, or public judgment. I wanted space to hear my own thoughts again. Leaving was not surrender. It was preservation. I packed quietly, organized documents, closed accounts, and simplified my life with precision. Each practical step felt like reclaiming oxygen. When the plane lifted, I felt no triumph, only relief mixed with resolve, the kind that comes from choosing yourself without announcement. It was deliberate, mature, necessary, and long overdue for my own survival. Moving abroad was not an escape from her presence, but a return to myself. Distance stripped away noise and expectation. In unfamiliar streets, No one knew my past or my compromises. I rebuilt routines slowly, learning who I was without constant adjustment. Silence became instructive rather than lonely. I understood then that fights are not the only ending. Sometimes the bravest decision is leaving without spectacle, allowing life to continue elsewhere with dignity intact. That choice, misunderstood by many, ultimately saved my future and reshaped my understanding of strength. It demanded patience, clarity, courage, and faith in quiet personal evolution. He had always been there, never announced, never questioned, existing like background furniture everyone accepts. He appeared at dinners, celebrations, and ordinary afternoons, offering help before it was asked. His smile came too easily when she spoke, lingering longer than politeness required. People noticed, but avoided naming discomfort. Familiarity disguises many boundaries. I observed him quietly, not threatened but alert, sensing something misplaced. He did not compete or challenge. He blended in smoothly, creating comfort rather than tension. That kind of presence is dangerous because it hides intention behind courtesy and patience, waiting calmly for opportunity without drawing attention silently. During the marriage, I questioned myself more than him, wondering if maturity meant tolerating unease. He listened attentively when she complained, nodded thoughtfully, validated frustrations I was never invited to hear. I learned later how closeness grows invisibly through shared grievance. He positioned himself as understanding without responsibility. No confrontations, no risk. When I stepped back emotionally, he stepped forward effortlessly. There was no betrayal announcement, only gradual replacement. By the time I noticed patterns, the arrangement felt normalized. That is how some affairs begin, not with passion, but with availability disguised as friendship. It became clear only after distance. When news reached me that she married him immediately after the divorce, I felt confirmation rather than surprise. Timelines aligned too neatly to provoke disbelief. What unsettled me was speed, not choice. Grief usually pauses people. Reflection slows decisions. She accelerated instead, turning resolution into spectacle. Announcements appeared quickly, photos carefully staged, happiness displayed loudly. It felt less like love and more like defense. Rushing forward was her way of controlling the narrative, proving certainty before doubt could surface. I understood then the marriage was not about him alone, but about erasing questions she never allowed herself to face realities. For someone who values stability later in life, that urgency speaks volumes. Mature love breathes. It does not sprint. I saw clearly that she needed witnesses, validation, applause. Quiet commitment would not have satisfied her. The ceremony was proof directed outward, not inward. While others congratulated, I recognized the familiar pattern of performance. That realization closed something inside me. There was nothing left to explain or confront. Choosing him so quickly revealed less about betrayal and more about her discomfort with stillness. Some people fear silence more than mistakes and rush to fill it publicly before facing themselves honestly alone. The wedding happened with a speed that startled even those who supported her. Invitations appeared suddenly, vendors were booked overnight, and within weeks an entire celebration was assembled with the urgency of someone racing against an invisible deadline. The venue was grand, decorated with towering flowers and glittering lights that tried too hard to impress. Music played loudly, laughter echoed in exaggerated bursts, and every corner seemed arranged for photographs rather than presents. Nothing about the atmosphere felt intimate. It felt curated, as if the entire event had been designed to drown out any lingering doubt before it could take shape for anyone watching closely. Photos began flooding social media long before the ceremony started. She posed in every corner of the venue, adjusting her posture, angling her face to capture what she believed happiness should look like. Friends reposted pictures enthusiastically, yet the smiles carried a strain visible to anyone who knew her well. The groom tried to match her energy, standing proudly at her side, but his expression shifted whenever the cameras lowered. A wedding is usually a shared moment between two people. This one felt like a stage production with an audience she desperately needed to impress. I viewed it from afar, noticing what others ignored. During the reception, the pace of the celebration became even more telling. Speeches were rushed, dances rehearsed, and every moment was interrupted by someone with a phone. She moved through the room like a hostess rather than a new bride, ensuring every gesture was witnessed. Her friends whispered among themselves, amused by the extravagance. A few older relatives exchanged looks of confusion, sensing the hurried nature of everything. Real confidence grows quietly. It does not require applause or dramatic displays. The louder she celebrated, the more evident it became that something unsettled her beneath the polished veneer she constructed. Then something unexpected happened. In the middle of a group photo, a power outage swept through the hall, plunging the grand room into sudden darkness. Guests gasped and murmured, searching for their phones, while candles flickered weakly from one neglected corner. Without the bright lights and camera flashes, her entire posture shifted. She stopped smiling. Her shoulders dropped slightly. The groom reached for her hand, but she hesitated, momentarily exposed without the shield of performance. It lasted only a few seconds, but those seconds revealed more truth than any photograph taken that day. The room fell silent, and in that silence the celebration felt less convincing, as if the darkness had revealed what the lights were hiding. The reception had regained its brightness after the brief outage, and the guests were finally settling into genuine conversation. Plates clattered softly, music drifted from the speakers, and the atmosphere loosened. People who had been posing for photos now relaxed with drinks in their hands, relieved that the evening no longer demanded performance. In the center of the hall, the newly married couple moved from table to table accepting congratulations. She kept smiling, insisting on enthusiasm even when her eyes revealed exhaustion. The groom followed closely, offering polite nods, careful not to reveal the tension that had crept into his posture since the blackout. At one table, a group of older guests gathered, people who had known her long before her new life, long before the polished image she presented. They exchanged stories softly, half amused, half nostalgic. One of them, an uncle known for speaking truth without malice, stood with his glass raised when she approached. The room quieted slightly in expectation. He cleared his throat, offered a warm smile, and delivered a sentence so simple that no one recognized its weight at first. It was not an insult, not an accusation, not even a criticism. It was a reminder, a memory spoken out loud. He mentioned a moment from years earlier, a moment she had worked tirelessly to erase. A promise she had made publicly, a promise that contradicted everything she was celebrating that night. The words drifted gently across the room, but they carried the force of a bell tolling. Guests froze. Conversations faltered mid-sentence. The band played softly, unaware that the reception had shifted from celebration to scrutiny. The sentence hung in the air with surprising clarity. People who knew the story inhaled sharply. Those who did not glance around seeking an explanation as tension replaced laughter. Her reaction was immediate and uncontrollable. The smile she had held like armor vanished. Color drained from her face so quickly that even distant guests noticed. She gripped the back of a chair for balance, eyes suddenly unfocused, as if the past had stepped forward and taken its place beside her. The groom stiffened, unsure whether to comfort her or defuse the room. No one spoke. Silence settled over the hall like dust after a collapse. This was not embarrassment. Embarrassment softens after a moment. What she felt was exposure, the kind that reaches the bones and reminds a person that truth waits patiently, even at weddings. What happened after that sentence was almost invisible to anyone who did not know her well, but unmistakable to those who understood the way she carried herself. The reception slowly resumed, music rising, guests trying to pretend nothing significant had happened. Yet the shift inside her was immediate and irreversible. She stood straighter than usual, shoulders rigid, as if bracing against an invisible wind. Her eyes no longer scanned the room for approval. They darted instead toward every familiar face, searching for signs of judgment. The celebration around her continued, but she was no longer part of it. She was inside her own panic. The sentence had not mentioned my name. It had not referenced our marriage or the divorce. It touched something older, something she had buried long before meeting me. That was what made it devastating. It confronted the version of herself she had worked tirelessly to construct. The groom sensed something was wrong and attempted to soften the moment with a gentle squeeze of her hand. He offered smiles to the guests, hoping charm would erase discomfort. But charm cannot compete with truth when it enters a room uninvited. His reassurance changed nothing. She stood beside him but felt suddenly alone. As the evening progressed, she moved mechanically through the rituals of celebration. Cutting the cake, greeting distant relatives, posing for photos. Each action was performed out of obligation rather than joy. That single sentence had pulled a thread from her carefully woven life, and she felt the unraveling begin. She had always believed she could control a narrative by managing what others saw. Yet the presence of witnesses reminded her that some histories cannot be deleted, only endured. A person may rewrite their story online, in conversation, even in memory. Witnesses, however, hold the original version. The moment that sentence echoed, something behind her eyes dimmed. It was not sadness or regret. It was awareness. She realized the wedding she built to symbolize triumph had instead revealed fragility. The groom continued smiling, unaware of the internal collapse occurring beside him. The guests resumed their celebrations, unaware that the bride was mourning the loss of her illusion. What the sentence truly took from her was control, the kind she relied on to maintain confidence. Once gone, no decoration, no applause, no husband could restore it. The past had spoken softly, and she understood it would not stay silent again. 3 hours after the reception ended, my apartment was wrapped in the kind of silence only foreign cities offer. I had returned from a late walk, letting the cool air settle my thoughts, when my phone lit up on the table. I glanced over and froze. Her name pulsed on the screen. There was no confusion, no coincidence, no practical explanation. A bride does not reach back into her past on the night she is supposed to begin her future. I let the phone ring, watching the name instead of the device, already recognizing the tone that waited behind the call. People do not dial an ex-spouse unless something has shattered privately, something they cannot hide from themselves anymore. When the call stopped, the apartment felt even quieter. I waited, knowing it would come again. 10 minutes passed. The phone vibrated a second time. Same name glowing. Same insistence. I did not answer. My mind drifted to the hours after a wedding ends, when couples change out of their formal clothes